So with Ramp Metals, the symbol is Ramp on the TSX Venture. CEO is Jordan Black. Ramp made a new discovery in Saskatchewan in 2024. It's actually grassroots new discovery at the Ranger prospect or Ranger target in the Rottenstone domain in Saskatchewan. Very interesting discovery because it was a blind discovery and it was pretty unexpected to say the least. 7.5 meters grading 73.55 grams per ton gold, beginning about 220 meters downhole. That's pretty good for a blind discovery. We don't see that very often in the gold exploration industry. So I want to get a full update today from the company. We have VPX, Garrett Smith, and Jordan, the CEO. Good morning, guys. How are you doing?
Good morning. Thanks for having us on today.
Yeah, good morning. I'm good, thank you.
Yeah, I'm really interested in this update. This is our first recorded conversation, and this will go up on YouTube in the next couple of days. So let's catch everybody up to speed. Let's just assume that people didn't follow the story in 2024, and for those that did, we'll have some more meat, later in the conversation and some new updates. So the new discovery at Ranger, how unexpected was this, and what did it feel like when you read, the assay sheet?
Yeah, well, look, I'll kick this off and then I'll pass it over to Garrett because he got the assays first, and then they texted me the amazing numbers that we were just blown away from. But look, it all started as a grassroots exploration company. We are looking to find something brand new, something that's never been worked before. And Garrett and Brett, born and raised in Saskatchewan, were always hunting for that next property in their backyard after working for a few of the majors in Saskatchewan. So we formed Ramp Metals, and the property they staked themselves was downtrend of the old Rottenstone mine. So historically, it produced some of the highest grade nickel in the country, grading at 3.28% nickel, and it had these really nice kickers of copper and PGs as well, and gold. So we were thinking, okay, maybe we'd get a hint of gold, but we were always looking for nickel sulfides, right? And fast forward to going public back in March, that was a huge accomplishment for us last year. And our big thing was always let's put the money we raised directly in the ground and do some true exploration. So first thing we did, actually, even before we went public, was we flew TDEM geophysics. We generated some really nice conductors across the property. And we did, exploration an unconventional way where we, instead of doing spending a year ground truthing the property, we're like, okay, let's just go drill these anomalies. They look pretty big. Plus, we have historical work in the area, so we can base our theories on that. So what we did is we started drilling as soon as we went public, and when the guys actually back up a bit, we did a small prospecting program when we were cutting the drill pads for drilling. So the guys were out there and they took a few samples as they were cutting the drill pads, and that was interesting because they found a few grab samples at surface grading 1 gram per ton and 5 grams per ton of gold under one of the smaller anomalies on the property. So we're like, okay, we might as well Garrett can speak to this later, but we're like, we might as well throw a YOLO hole down there at Ranger. Meanwhile, our focus was at Rogue, which was the center of this eye structure. So our whole theory was it looked like this Nova Bollinger eye structure that Mark Bennett discovered in Australia a few years back, who's actually an advisor to Ramp Metals. And he thought it was eerily similar to his property, even though it was across the world from us. And he ended up selling that for 1.8 billion at the time. It was a pretty significant nickel discovery. So we always had this theory that, okay, there's got to be these anomalies around the eye where we're, I guess, essentially hunting for. and those holes were right in the center of the eye. And so we drilled those and then headed off to Ranger. And then, as you mentioned, we got these crazy assays back once we finally got the Ranger hole, and like we were blown away. And Garrett, maybe you want to add a little bit to that.
Yeah, sure. As Jordan said, it was originally these nickel sulfide targets. And as you said, we did take a very unconventional approach. I just find I want to get out there and, put the drill to work and see what's there. I find too many companies just spend, too much time and money kicking around rocks and stuff up top. And, if your conductor's not starting till 50 or 100 meters, you can spend all the time up top you want, and you're not really going to know what it is until you drill it. So this is kind of unique to massive sulfides or nickel sulfide targets. I wouldn't suggest that theory on gold or something like that, but when you are targeting these conductors at depth, we just felt that our money would be better served going out there and punching some holes in it and seeing what we got. So as he said, we mainly focused on the rogue target. It was the one that looked the most similar to the Nova Bollinger target that Mark had found. So we punched 3 holes into that, and then we went over to Ranger target, where we did have those gold grabs at surface. When Brett and I were out there cutting the drill pads and getting ready for the program, Ranger is one of the only portions of the property that has really good outcrop exposure. So we stopped by there and, smashed off whatever samples we could. We mainly focused on, these Mafic looking rocks or something that would, host these nickel sulfides, and just smashed off what we could. I think we smashed off maybe a dozen samples, 12 to 15 samples. We were only there for 3 hours, just kind of taking rep samples of these, more mafic rocks, amphibolites, pyroxenites. But, we just didn't really see much in them as far as sulfides go, and just sent them in just to kind of get some geochem on them and see what we got. And we were pretty surprised when those came back with 1 gram per ton, 1.09 grams per ton, and another one kicked 5.11 grams per ton. So it was quite unexpected, but even when we drilled that Ranger hole, that's not what we were targeting. We knew that there was potentially, we knew that there was gold in the area based off those samples, but what we were looking for were these conductors at depth. So we had a very nice conductor at depth at Ranger. It started at approximately 50 meters. And so that's what we were targeting in this drill program. And what ended up happening is just with the way that the conductor looked in the geophysics, it looked like we would intersect it at, the 50 meter range. And then it looked like it folded around, and that if we kept punching, we could potentially tag it again at the, around the 300 range. So that's why we kept drilling as deep as we did. We drilled, we got the conductor, we got these semi-massive sulfides right where we would expect them at 50 meters. So we figured our geophysical targeting was pretty bang on there. And we just kept punching because it was going to be the last hole of the program. And, we didn't have time to move or set up anywhere else. We just figured, we'll just keep punching as long as we can until we have to call it. And this quartz diorite intrusion happened to be, just underneath it. So we started intersecting this quartz diorite at 145 meters. And we were in it till the end of the hole at 314. So we never really got to the other side of it to see if we could tag that conductor. And it being a completely new area, I'm of the opinion you have to sample every meter. We really focused on, base metals and stuff like that. Anywhere we saw these semi-massive sulfides or we could see visual sulfides. But at the bare minimum, what I wanted to do was sample top to bottom for, gold, because a lot of times it's not going to be something that stands out visually. You can drill these and you're not really seeing too much in core, and then you get surprised with these grades. So we did that to cover our bases, and yeah, when we got the results back, obviously disappointing that we didn't, the sulfides that we did hit didn't contain, much nickel at all. But a great surprise for us to see these intersections of gold in the quartz diorite there. So I was pretty floored by it when we saw it in assay.
Yeah, it's interesting because I look at the drill core, and some other people commented as well. I mean, the core looks good, but I would have never guessed over 2 ounces per ton gold. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
you and
kind of
me both.
sneaky.
Yeah, you and me both. Like honestly, when I drilled it, or when we drilled it, we started getting, as I said, we started getting into it at 145, and we just kept pulling it up. And my honest answer to the guys, on the board, and even talking with Brett, I was like, well, this is 170 meters of countertop that I don't want to see, because it was very boring. There's some, we did have. It's like two phases of intrusive. So we do have the main quartz diorite, but then we have these little, veins or small dikes cross-cutting it of more of a granite type. But it wasn't super exciting. As I said, we have some disseminated sulfide throughout it, but I was just sampling it on, 1.5 meter intervals, just kind of saying, get this off my table. It just didn't look exciting. Sampled it for gold, and yeah, just pleasantly surprised with the results anyway.
So, what is your current interpretation as to what is carrying the gold? Like, what brought the gold in there on those 10 meters or so?
At this stage, we're not, obviously we're not exactly sure. It's what we have kind of deduced anyway, just from looking at the core, is that the zones that seem to grade do have a more pronounced foliation to them. So, potentially higher strain zones than what we were seeing throughout the rest of the intrusion. The rest of the intrusion is just kind of more massive than anything. And these zones appear to have more of a foliation to them. It's really difficult to say because we never really saw the other side of it. So I'm not sure if we were just, very close to the contact, riding very close to the edge of the contact, and we were just kind of coming in and out of the zone between the quartz diorite and another rock package. But we do hope to figure that out more with this next program, because we will be set up like this hole. The first hole that we drilled was kind of drilled down dip, just because we were trying to stay in that conductive zone as much as possible. But going forward, we will do oriented core and everything, and set up more to the northwest and come back south to the southeast across it, and that'll give us a much better idea of the stratigraphy in the area, how the true thickness of things. And with the oriented core, we'll get a much better idea of, the orientation of this thing in the subsurface. It's very, very hard to say at the moment, just because as Jordan said, it was pretty much a YOLO hole. We just sent a hole down there, no oriented core, nothing like that. And so we only really have to go off of kind of the depths of intersection at this stage. But
Yeah,
I am really looking forward to getting back out there and, coming at it from the other angle, where we'll be able to see, where the contacts are. We did have some Mafic dikes that we're cutting across it. So, that could potentially have something to do with the gold mineralization. And there was some late stage, pegmatite dikes. There was a late stage pegmatite dike that was kind of right above the high grade zone. So it'll be interesting to see if that has, something to do with the mineralization. But there's just so many unknowns at this stage. We're just going to have to, put a fence around this thing and really try to see what's hosting it or what the cause of this mineralization is.
Yeah, it's fascinating because the company drilled 4 holes in 2024, and 3 of them were at Rogue, and this was the only one planned at Ranger, and it's the one that hit the jackpot. Um, no, so 1 hole is really never enough, into a new target to get enough information to fully understand it and put it into context. So yeah, you have to obviously drill 4, 5, 6 more holes to really get a good understanding of the structures at play and what could be driving that really high grade gold that you hit about 220 meters down hole. It's fascinating, and that's what makes this business exciting and fun sometimes. So I want to go back to Jordan. It's really interesting because when the company announced that hole last June, I remember the morning of the news, and I remember reading it, and I was like, I thought this was a nickel company. Like, that was my first thought. And then my second thought was, hold on, these grades are just extraordinary. And I didn't have the full context. The first couple of hours, I had to learn a little bit more and then talk to you guys. But um, it's incredibly exciting to find something completely unexpected in a grassroots target. And also, let me give you a little bit of acknowledgement here for having a tight share structure and not a whole lot of loose paper floating around. So, ramp shares were able to generate a considerable amount of torque from 15 cents pre discovery to a week later, getting to almost 90 cents. There was definitely some volatility there. It's been a little volatile, although that's smoothed out a lot in the last few months. But I think the way it's traded is a product of the share structure, and that's great because we could use more of these types of lifts from 15 cents to $1 in the junior mining sector. So tell us a little bit about the share structure, Jordan, some of the largest shareholders, and what you've been up to during the off season.
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute there. Yeah,
No
look,
worries.
the first thing we did when we formed Ramp Metals was actually positioning in Garrett and Brett, who are our head of exploration and VP of operations, right? When we formed Ramp, I never wanted to be the CEO of a company that just optioned off a property from a group of individuals and then they just leave and you're kind of stuck with the property. I wanted to like build a core team around the property and around the geos that found it. So right out of the gate, Garrett and Brett are two of the largest shareholders in the company, along with management and directors like my business partner Prit Singh and myself and Dave Parker. I think out of the gate we controlled almost 60% of the supply. Currently, after the latest raise this summer, we still own 47%. And we really wanted to make sure everyone who came in were long-term holders and wanted to see this through to a potential deposit. So after that major discovery, we were very careful on who we brought in. And my history in the exploration business started with Gold Spot and Earth Labs. And I was really good friends with Denis Lavillette and the guys there. And they actually introduced us to Eric Sprott, who came in on our approximately $5 million financing. So even after this raise in the summer, we were still able to keep the share structure tight. And with our ownership of 47%, friends and family and people close to the company are probably even pushing 60%, right? And it's not easy to do. Like I'd be lying to say that was like an easy structure to form. When we raised our first 400K before we were even public, and that's what paid for the original geophysics, we got essentially lucky then when the LME nickel exchange blew up on that short squeeze. So we were able to get funding there for our nickel / battery metals company, right? And then when we went to go public, it wasn't easy to raise, right? Nickel had really corrected, and as you know, like the TSX-V was probably close to 25-year lows in that December prior to us going public. So money and interest rates in Canada were really working against us. But it all, with one good hole, it all came together, right? And it all came down to being a true grassroots exploration company, right? Like we started off branded as a nickel company, but really we're out there to hunt for new deposits, right? And not just like twin a new drill hole that's been recycled 5 times from different promo companies, right? So that's what our motto and our I guess our company was founded on.
Yeah, it's refreshing to hear you say some of those things. And it's good to get lucky sometimes. We need a little luck in this world, but obviously the luck is also, a result of choosing a good location and putting the hole in the right place. So, the Ranger 1 hole was announced in June. You did a financing with Eric Sprott during the summer. You brought in several $1 million, and then you did some more work on the property. So tell us about the field program, the mapping and sampling program, and when will we get the results of that?
Yeah, so this is another exciting part of the story where we finally got our permits to go prospecting. That was here in October. We did a 14-day program, and we took over 300 rock samples and 225 soil samples across the property. And if you look at our latest press release on December 2nd, it looks like we actually found another potential deposit up in the northwest corner, which is 7.5 kilometers or so away from Ranger. So this property that has all these anomalies on it, it looks like they could be potentially mineralized, right? And if you look at that press release again, referring to that, like we and I'll let Garrett, I'll hand it over to Garrett here, but we found a disseminated chalcopyrite at surface, and we had this really nice like malachite staining, right? And if the audience isn't aware, it's like that green, like copper looking oxidized staining, right? So to find that right at surface with an underlying conductor of about 1,200 meters, like that's promising in itself as well. So Garrett, if you wanted to speak to the entire program, I'll pass it off to you.
Yeah, sure. So as Jordan said, permitting is always, I don't want to say an issue, but always, something you have to stay on top of. We did get, as you said, we did get our permits in October there. So we really tried to squeeze in a field program before the snow came. It ended up being 14 days, and we literally got our first big dump of snow the day we were leaving. So just happened to squeeze that in. We really wanted to focus on, mapping and sampling, obviously around Ranger, to see if we could pick up the surface expression of that, quartz diorite at surface, and maybe try to expand on some more samples there. But we also really wanted to check out all the other anomalies on the property. I mean, this was essentially the first time that we had been out there prospecting and sampling this property. So we really wanted to try to hit as many of these anomalies that we could. So our main focuses were Ranger, Rogue. We did a soil sampling program over top of Rogue, because this at Rogue, although we didn't get the those banger grades that we got over at Ranger, we still ended up getting a few intersections of a meter and a half of 1 to 1.8 grams per ton gold, which was quite interesting there, again, especially because we weren't really targeting these structures. We were more targeting the conductive body over there. So we thought it would be best to follow up there. The issue with Rogue is that we don't have all that nice outcrop like we do at Ranger. So Rogue is covered with up to probably about 10 meters of glacial till. So the most we could really do there was a soil sample grid. So we're eagerly anticipating those results. And we should have the results, pretty imminent here. Unfortunately, with the labs, it just, they'll give you a timeline, and I always tell the board, like, don't listen to that timeline. We'll kind of get them when we get them. And I think just with the Christmas break in there and everything, it dragged out much longer than what we anticipated, but we do expect them imminently anyway. And so we did the surface sampling there, and then we also sent the guys out to the Rush area because this was another main conductor on our property. We had this nice big conductive zone that's 1,200 meters in length. It happened to be right on the very edge of our geophysical survey. So we don't have a good geophysical picture over the entire anomaly. It kind of gets cut off by the edge of our survey zone. But when the guys were out there and, they came back, I would say it was the most exciting rocks that we had seen on the property to date as far as visually, because as Jordan said, we were getting all these samples with, chalcopyrite and the malachite staining and everything right at surface. Exposure is quite limited there as well. It's, limited to a few bedrock ridges, but a lot of it is undercover again. So, we traced it out as far as we could on the outcrop, and then it kind of dipped undercover to the northeast and to the southwest. So we got the guys to also, just to kind of see if it extended to the northeast, we got them to go out and do a few lines of soil sampling. So it'll be interesting to see what those come back as. But for me, it's quite an exciting target. To have that mineralization at surface, and then you have this big conductor underlying it. If that conductor is caused by a greater accumulation of the sulfides that we're seeing at surface, it could be very, very exciting for the drill program. And we do anticipate testing all three targets, in this upcoming drill programs. So we won't just be limited to Ranger. Ranger is obviously going to be the focus, putting a fence around that and seeing if we can get a better idea of the mineralization and the orientation. But after what we've seen at Rush, especially, I definitely want to get some holes in there. And the upcoming geophysical program should help with that as well. So we do want to complete the data set over the property so we have a better picture of that anomaly, and who knows what else we might come across.
So this will be the phase 2 drill program, and I think you're targeting about 5,000, meters in this phase 2. So, I mean, looking at the scale map on this trend of Rush, Rogue, Ranger, the 3 R's, the scale is pretty substantial here. This is not a small area. This is a large area. So how do you split up the meterage with such large targets to test?
Well, as I said, I think a lot of the meterage is going to go towards Ranger. That's where we've had our success to date, and we really need to try to figure out the orientation and stuff, and that's going to take quite a few holes. So we'll put, as I said, a good fence around that to see if we can figure out the orientation. But we definitely should have some plenty of meterage left to go. Toss a couple holes over at Rogue and some up at Rush as well. As I said, it's just, I think the amount of holes at Rogue and Rush will be obviously dependent on what we're seeing there in core. If we're not really seeing anything too exciting in core, I don't want to just go wasting meterage there. But I'm excited to get back out there and drill them anyway.
Okay. And back to Jordan. The junior mining sector and the market overall is all about expectations, and management often sets those shareholder expectations through their body language. Um, so, what is your thinking in terms of expectations here and setting expectations for this phase 2 program?
Yeah, so if I had to really set expectations, look, we want to obviously mimic getting 73.55 grams per ton over 7.5 meters, right? But really, that's like the top 3% intercept ever in the world. I think it was when I went on Chat GPT to look at the data set, right? So look, if we get anything close to that, we'll be thrilled. But also, like, this property is still really underexplored, right? Like, when you look at most exploration companies, a lot of them might even have a potential reserve on them already. We literally have only been out here since March of last year, right? So we haven't even been fully prospecting for a year yet. And we need to put meters in the ground, right? So as Garrett said, like, we need to fence around Ranger. We need to drill rogue because the rocks at the bottom of the hole there look really interesting, like rocks you'd find normally in a typical like Northern Ontario gold deposit, right? With that green stone and silica flooding. And then Rush, which is newly discovered. So we're looking at like 3 potential mineralized zones, all of different rock types too, right? So I guess what I would say is, like, this is really just the beginning of our story. And that's why we want to fly geophysics across the entire property and just see how many deposits we could find on site.
And how much cash does the company currently have?
Yeah, so we're sitting still around that 5 million mark in the treasury that we recently raised. So we're looking to potentially spend around half of it for this upcoming drill program. And that will leave us a lot of ammunition to go back in the summer and the fall as well, to follow up with this current one. So we want to do a phased approach, right? And it's going to be fluid, right? If we do see stuff in the core, Garrett, myself, Brett, we're going to be active on switching the program up on the fly if needed, if we need to go deeper, if we need to add more holes. Having a treasury of 5 million allows us to do that. And we also want to be cautious and maybe wait for some lab results too before we go back and spend it all in one shot, right? We definitely don't want to do that. And as you know, like with junior exploration, it's a phased approach and going and eventually raising more money when the time is right.
Absolutely. So I want to take a question from the audience. If someone has a question, go ahead and ask to be a speaker, and I'll activate your mic. So roughly, what sort of a timeline are we looking at here over the next several months in terms of the results of the sampling program and then the commencement of drilling phase 2?
Yeah, so as Garrett said, the recent lab assays are imminent. So we'll see those soon. We'll be at VRIC next week to speak to investors and shareholders in person. We'll also be flying geophysics very soon as well. And with that, we'll hopefully get some more defined drill targets. And then we'll be drilling pretty much as soon as that's complete, pending drill permits, which are also expected soon as well. So Q1 is going to be very, I think, busy for Rant Metals, which is really exciting. Like, that's what we love to do. We like being in the field and we like exploring. And I think going forward, there'll be less waits because after this permitting process, we'll probably apply for 2-year permits instead of the standard 1 year. And that should really set us up for less delays.
All right, we have a question from Alan Barry. Alan, good morning.
Hey, good morning, guys. Thanks for taking my questions. One of the a couple things, uh, right out the bat, the grades and the thickness was shockingly impressive. And secondly, it looking at the core, which I did, it was looking to me like that could be distal to the actual main mineralizing system, which is tremendously exciting. I also had a look at your geophysics, and it seems like there's a north-south.
Did we lose Alan?
Yeah, I can't hear Alan. Alan, if you want to leave and come back, that might help.
Yeah, sometimes you got to leave and come back. Or sometimes it's weird. Sometimes if you let your phone screensaver go on, it stops your mic. I don't know. It's a little tricky sometimes.
Yeah, Elon fired a few people at Twitter.
Although this platform has gotten way better over the last couple of years, and now I've seen spaces with 1 million people on them, so that is pretty impressive.
Yeah, we're actually going to look to get our account verified here so we can expand our reach going into the drill season.
Nice. We'll see if Alan comes back.
He had some good points there before he got cut off.
Yeah, I feel like there was a question. There was a question coming. Yeah. So I mean, 5,000 meters. How many holes do you think that will turn out to be? Are we talking about like 12 to 15 holes?
Garrett, if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, we're kind of looking in that range. Like I don't want to be sending 500-meter holes. I don't think that's necessary by any means at this stage. I think a lot of the holes are going to be under 300. We may send a couple to 400, just depending on what we're seeing, but nothing too crazy. With our mineralization starting at 227 in Ranger, I'd really like, I don't think there's a point in going super deep past that, especially because the goal of this upcoming program will be to really try to track down that zone and figure out the orientation of it. So I'm guessing around 15 holes, give or take a few, just depending on what we see.
Okay. And will you publish a drill plan map like fairly early in the program, like showing the drill trace for holes 1, 2, etc.?
Yeah, we could definitely do that. Things may change on the fly, just depending on what we see. But I think especially at Ranger, we should be able to put out that fence relatively easy. I don't know if those holes will change too much, but for Rogue and Rush, it's really going to depend on what we're seeing in core and everything like that. So, but that shouldn't be a problem.
Okay. Well, I think I've had all my questions answered. I don't see Alan back. If anybody else has a question, last chance, and then I'll give Jordan the final word, and we'll wrap it up. Yeah, go ahead, Jordan. Final word. Anything that you think that you need to address, or anything I didn't ask?
Look, I just want to say thanks for having us on today. I think this was was one of the more detailed interviews we did, so I really appreciate that. It's nice to get into the guts of Ramp Metals, so people actually understand the story of like where we've come from and where we're going. Like I said earlier, this is really just the beginning. We have one of the top gold intercepts in the world, essentially, and potentially other mineralization on site. That's going to get really interesting going into this drill program. So I think the most exciting thing in junior exploration is drilling. Like the proof is in the drills, is what I always say. And our drilling is coming up very soon. So I just want all the shareholders and followers of Ramp Metals to just get excited for this upcoming program.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think Ramp is one of the most interesting, junior mining stories of 2025, and I'm really excited to see you do a more thorough, program with more meterage and more data. And then I can only imagine how much data we'll have at the end of this year. So thanks to Jordan and Garrett. I really appreciate your time this morning, and this will be up on my YouTube at Goldfinger Capital over the weekend. Cheers, and thanks to everybody for tuning in. Bye.